Right. Over to you, Tom.
Thank you. Welcome everybody to tonight's edition of Cold Water Capers, brought to you by the Cape Long Distance Swimming Association. The CLDSA is an organization that promotes, records and supports long distance swimming in the Cape, long distance being swims greater than 7.4 kilometers. The organization is over 50 years old and our records include over 3,000 successful swims. Thanks to you all for attending tonight. We have a diverse audience of members and non-members here. For those who aren't members, a reminder, membership is just 300 Rand. Sign up on the website cldsa.co.za and get complimentary tickets to our talks, discounted coaching and officiation for your swims. In this series, we talk to icons of Cape long distance swimming. How did they start? What inspires them? And what cold water anecdotes do they have to share with us? Tonight we have Andrea Mason. She's an extreme athlete who completed a number of awe-inspiring feats and continues to do so, while many of us know her for her swimming achievements, including the English Channel, multiple sub-2-hour Robben Island crossings, and the first to swim the 40-kilometer False Bay Diagonal. Her achievements on the bike and on foot are, if not more, impressive. In 2019, she completed the first of her sea to summit achievements, swimming the English Channel, cycling across France, and then climbing Mt Blanc, all in just under 5 days. A year later, she matched this with another 38-kilometer lake swim, cycling the grueling Tour de Mont Blanc, and then topping this off with a 170K trail run, again in under 5 days. As with many driven athletes, Andrea has faced her own treacherous channels and peaks, having been diagnosed with a number of gynecological conditions throughout her life. In 2020, she founded Lady Talk Matters, a charity focused on female reproductive health, particularly amongst the impoverished in our society. Welcome, Andrea.
Thanks, Tom. Hi, everyone.
So most of our guests we've had are all known for their achievements in open water, but not only have you achieved the incredible in water, but you've also incorporated cycling, running, hiking alongside those achievements. Was swimming your first love, or have you always enjoyed all three disciplines?
No, definitely not. Swimming was by far the first thing that I did. I think if you spoke to my parents, I swam before I walked. I was basically thrown into a swimming pool from a very, very small age, very young age. And I swam, I think my first sort of big swim, and it's all relative to your age, but I swam 5,000 meters on my 4th birthday. So 200 lengths of a 25-meter swimming pool on my 4th birthday. I still don't know how or if it's possible at that age, but I was apparently fed Mars bars at the end of every 100 meters, so it kept me going throughout the swim.
Yeah. So, and your parents' involvement, were they driving you, or were you running to the pool, jumping in, and that was it, and you were pulling them along with you?
I think it was a bit of both. I grew up in a military family, so we traveled the world, and we were constantly at and given access to swimming pools in army barracks. And so I was, I wanted to do it at all times, but I was also really actively encouraged. I had quite sporty parents at the time. And yeah, I was really encouraged to get into the water and swim as much as possible and play as well.
And so, from that first 5-kilometer swim, you went from there to eventually representing your country. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I did, yeah. So I started competitive swimming probably when I was about 8 years old. I think because my dad was in the army, I would get put on a plane on my own at 8, 9, 10 years old, sent across to the UK if we were in Ireland or Germany, another country at the time, to swimming competitions. And yeah, I loved competing more than I did training at that point. And as the years went on, yeah, I competed in quite a number of national and international competitions representing Great Britain and Ireland for probably maybe 4, 5, 6 years of my teenage life.
Okay. And then when did you move from pool swimming to open water swimming?
Really only when I decided to do my first challenge in 2019. So I'd done, well, that's maybe a lie. I'd done a few triathlons. I'd done a few Ironman triathlons. So I'd swam, but the most I'd ever swam in open water, in fact, until I came to Cape Town in 2018, was the 3.8K swim in an Ironman. I'd never swam longer than that in open water. And then the very first time I came to Cape Town, I attended one of the Big Bay swim camps in Langebaan. And that was my first experience in cold open water. So that was in 2018. And I was made. I obviously have a choice, but I was definitely encouraged by Ryan and others on the camp to keep swimming for 6 hours that day. So my first sort of, big open water swim was a 6-hour swim in 2018.
It's actually amazing how many swimmers have got into open water quite later on in life. There's quite a lot of us, and it's amazing how a bug can bite you. I mean, you've been swimming all your life.
I think if I'd have known about open water swimming when I was a bit younger, or when I swam, even as a pool swimmer, women couldn't swim. There wasn't the 1500 meter event when I was pool swimming. The longest distance was 800 meters. So open water swimming, to my knowledge, didn't really exist, or it wasn't accessible to me.
Interesting. And yeah, you've mentioned a little bit about triathlons and Ironman. Obviously that came in. Is it true that your first triathlon was an Ironman? Is that right?
Yeah, it is. And again, that's another lie. I was going to say I've never done anything shorter than an Ironman in triathlon, but I have, because I've done a couple of the sprint Xterra events in Cape Town.
Okay.
Yeah. So my very first triathlon was an Ironman, and I had taken it up, or taken on the challenge as a bit of at the time it was almost like a bit of a joke. It was a challenge from somebody else to do. I'd never really been on a bike since I was a kid. I used to run, but I was always injured running, so I didn't continue running past sort of 15, 16 years old. And so then my very first one was an Ironman, and I absolutely hated it. It was that bad that I honestly did burn. It was a very cheap bike. I just caveat that with this. I did put my bike on a bonfire because I hated it that much, and I swore I'd never get on a bike again.
All right. I think one of the things we like doing, in fact, before I get to the next part, just to let all the audience know, the format of tonight is we're going to run about half an hour chit chat, and then we would like to get to some Q&A as well. So you're welcome to open up the chat panel and put a question into the chat panel. I'll be reviewing them as we go, and I'll get to as many of those questions as I can. If I don't get to your question, I apologize in advance, but you're welcome to ask questions of Andrea that perhaps I have forgotten to cover, and hopefully Andrea's got an answer for us. So we'll get on to that shortly, but I just want to talk a little bit like what we do generally with these talks, with these icons of swimming, is actually just ask a little bit about what goes into doing a big swim. And we're going to talk about some of your achievements and some of the great big triathlon achievements, or the self-imposed triathlons, or self-made triathlons, if you like, the Sea to Summit challenges that you've achieved afterwards. But we would love to know what does it take to prepare for a big swim for Andrea Mason? What do you do? What sort of training are you getting up to? to get to do it? And I'm talking about some, you know, a lot of your swims are 30, 40 Ks. Some of us are not close to that, but, you know, what does it take to get to that sort of distance and comfortable at that sort of distance?
So I think for me, because I have such a big base level of fitness, I probably swim a lot less than most people would imagine that I do. So typically from a training point of view, I do maybe 3 or 4 pool swims a week. And then I try and do 1 long ocean swim every week. So particularly when I'm in South Africa, because I stay 6 months of the year in South Africa through the South African summer, and 6 months in Chamonix, because I can't swim in Chamonix in the winter. So we started coming to South Africa specifically, actually, so that I could train for my first Sea to Summit challenge. But if I'm preparing for a big swim or a longer swim, then you'll often see that, you know, I'm either doing a double Robben Island, or I'm doing a longer swim up in Langebaan. I'm always doing the swim camps. But I really try to focus a lot on quality rather than quantity, because I do have a lot of base fitness from the riding and from the running. So I know I've got that. So it's more a case of just making sure that I'm getting quality kilometers in and not junk kilometers. And then also just really focusing as well on the nutrition side of things. So making sure that in those longer swims that I'm using the nutrition that I'm going to be using when it comes to doing the actual challenge swims or the longer swims that I've set myself. It's, yeah, for me, that's one of the most important things is getting the nutrition right. Because normally after I've done a swim, that it doesn't finish for me then. So I've got to be able to fuel myself for the ride and the hike or run that comes after it.
And what is it that you normally, I think swimmers tend to vary, but what do you tend to eat during a swim? What are your favorite snacks as you go?
So I'm purely a liquid based. So for the swims I take really very little apart from pure multidextrin powder, normally just mixed with juice and water. I will always have snacks that are packed, and actually Derek and Debbie are normally always on all of my big swims wherever we go, so they put things in there for snacks for me. But the snacks for me is more about looking forward to something different. I don't believe I get any nutritional value from those snacks. So I really calculate what is it that I need from a carbohydrate perspective every 30 minutes. So I will always have 250 mils of the carb powder mix every 30 minutes for the duration of my swim. And then the snacks are more just for entertainment and thinking about what I might get as a surprise in the next snack. Some of my favorites are definitely cake. And I think the worst I've ever had, which was my choice, so I won't blame this one on you, Derek, but I think it was a chicken broth soup or something that I decided that it might be nice in the middle of the channel swim. I decided that it might be nice to have something warm at some point, and I spat that out quite quickly. It wasn't nice.
I'll talk about the cold water and dealing with that. I mean, we were talking earlier actually when we first chatted, and I think when I've chatted to some of the other people, they've noted that you've done some of your swims skins and some of your swims in a wetsuit. What do you prefer and why?
Depends on the day. So for the challenges, if it is a cold water swim, I will always swim in a wetsuit. for a number of reasons. One, primarily is, obviously I've then got a long ride and a long run to come afterwards. So the energy that it takes out of you swimming skins is definitely, it's nowhere near the same amount in a wetsuit for a long distance swim. It really does benefit you not coming out with hypothermia and being cold and shivering. And so you definitely, I get that added value being in a wetsuit. However, I am a sort of rare anonymous, I can never say that word, but I'm rare in that I actually swim quicker skins. So I don't swim faster in a wetsuit. And the reason normally is because I'm so buoyant in the water. My legs, and I actually, if anyone's ever seen me swim, I actually normally use my legs quite a lot. And when I'm in a wetsuit, my legs give me no propulsion whatsoever. So they sit higher above the water because I'm so buoyant anyway. So in comfort levels, from a stroke and a technique point of view, I definitely swim and prefer swimming skins. However, I'm, and most people know that I'm a big advocate for wetsuit swimming, because I think, and CLDSA are as well. But I think it's, really important to grow the sport and enable people to start swimming and have that first entry into open water swimming from the cold perspective. But so I pick and choose. I do have a cutoff limit that sometimes changes depending on who I'm swimming with and how much pressure I'm getting to swim skins. But I like to have the choice.
Okay, interesting. We're going to now jump into some of those great achievements. I think it'll be interesting to see if there's any additional questions on them, but I'm just going to share my screen very quickly. Let's see if we can get this up. Sure. We're going to look at some of your Sea to Summit Extreme, and those who are interested to learn more can go to your great website actually on Sea to Summit. So just Google Sea to Summit, you'll see Andrea Mason, you'll see sort of a blog and a lot of information around those achievements that Andrea has done over the years. So we're just going to jump into a couple of them that I think some I've covered in the intro, but the first one, I mean, this is when we first heard about you. And I mean, understanding that you really got into open water swimming, 2018? And in 2019, you were swimming the Channel. And not only that, you were jumping on a bicycle and racing from Calais down to Mt Blanc, 874 kilometers. And then a massive climb, and this is quite a treacherous climb. So, you did all of this in under 5 days, So what drove you to think of a challenge like this and have the audacity to think that you would be able to achieve it? How do you come up with this sort of thing?
So the honest answer is, so in 2017, I was quite sick and I was in hospital. I just had major surgery, and unfortunately after that major surgery, I'd also then just been diagnosed with cervical cancer. And there were a couple of things while I was in hospital that I really kept playing through my mind about things that I had done wrong, where, I hadn't been for my cervical smear tests or pap smear, as you call it here. But, 1 in 3 women don't attend their tests, but it is one of, those tests that really can prevent cervical cancer. So it's the one test for cancer that you can have that does prevent it. And I hadn't attended mine. And there I am laying in a hospital bed now being told that I had cervical cancer on top of, everything else that I'd been in hospital and having surgery for. And then the second part was, you know, a lot of the things I was having surgery for in terms of, you know, female menstrual health and endometriosis, we just don't talk about it enough. So one of the things I'm laying in hospital and thinking, well, I really want to try and do something that I can create a platform to, you know, raise awareness of menstrual health conditions like endometriosis, and encourage young women and girls to not go through the same as me, and make sure you have that Pap smear test. So basically, Carl, my husband, and I, we were sort of just sat talking about the types of things that I could do. It was always going to be sporty, because I've always, you know, been super sporty, and I've done, you know, had previously done Ironmans and done a few other, you know, not as crazy as this, but some other challenges, running across the Trans Rockies and things like that. And we just started talking and brainstorming, and I was like, well, you know, I've always wanted to swim the channel. Yeah, I've swam since I was a young girl, and I've never done it. And then we're joking, and Carl's like, yeah, but you know, with no disrespect, lots of people have already done it. It's an incredible challenge, but maybe you should think of something else. So then I was, okay, what else could I do? Well, we live at the foot of Mont Blanc, and I've never climbed Mont Blanc. Maybe I should give that a go. And again, you know, Carl was, yeah, but again, it's a huge challenge, but it's something that people have already done, and you want to try and do something that nobody else has done before. And then jokingly, and it really, at this point, it was absolutely a joke. Carl was, I know, I've got it. Why don't you just do them both and cycle the bit in between? Got no idea how far it is, but I'm sure you'll be able to do it. And again, he didn't think for 1 minute that it would be something that we would consider doing. But then it's amazing laying in hospital for another 10 days, what plays on your mind. And I kept going through it and thinking, do you think it's even possible? Could you go from sea level to altitude in, you know, a short space of time? Would you be able to make sure that you were, you know, altitude trained, that, you know, would you lose that altitude fitness? And I just kept playing all these questions through my mind. And then I was thinking, well, I wonder how fast you could do it. Like, how long would it actually take if I swam the channel in this amount of time and I rode at X kilometers an hour for, and yeah, one thing led to another, and we were busy planning the logistics a couple of weeks later. So
wow.
And most of my challenges since have either come from, you know, joke conversations like that, or probably a few too many glasses of wine round a dinner table.
Yeah, so I mean, that's I mean, you not only, I mean, after you do a great challenge, I think any of the great swimmers will tell you that, you know, it's always about what's the next one, and you've really kept them going, and you know, the level of impressiveness has not died down from year to year. So I think we'll go on to the next one. I think the Triple Crown. This is interesting. Yeah, a similar distance to the channel, but in a lake, 38 kilometers. Then a ride, which is not maybe that long. I mean, it's long, not the 900 Ks of the other one, but a lot of vertical climbing, and in that 9,170 meters of vertical. And then you left the 170 kilometer ultra trail run. I mean, how you had any energy to do a quarter of that, I don't know, but that was something special.
Yeah, so this one actually was, it's interesting because I was on my way. I was actually on my way to do the UK challenge at the time. So okay. I had all my logistics and all my planning for 2020 had gone into doing the challenge that I did last year, the 3 lakes and the 3 summits. And But unfortunately, and we were literally in the van on the way to the UK to start, and they locked the borders because of COVID. So I wasn't able to get from, because we were in Chamonix at the time, I wasn't able to get from Chamonix to the UK. And this is something, again, that I joked about with a friend a couple of weeks before, thinking, oh, I wonder what I would do, what I'll do in 2021. I'm on my way to do the UK one, but I'm probably going to want to do something in 2021 as well. So this one really got thrown together overnight. It wasn't something that I had ever intended to do in 2020. And I certainly hadn't spent enough time on my feet in the mountains. But luckily in these things, I tend to kind of either swim, ride, or run myself to fitness while I'm doing them.
Yeah, and then the one you were talking about, the lakes that should have been the year before. Yeah, I mean, 3 longest lakes, 3 highest peaks, and then 800 kilometers of cycling in between in the British countries of Wales, England, and Scotland, respectively. So sure, I mean, that was I mean, normally you're doing your swim, getting that finished, and then you're focusing on cycling, but here you're jumping between multiple disciplines from day to day.
Yeah, for me, this was by far the hardest I've done. And particularly because of what you've just said, it was normally, I have a long swim and then I'm done and I can put the swim away, it's done. I don't have to think about that. I've then only got, only relatively speaking, but then I've got a bike and a ride or a run, climb to do. And the swim is finished. But on this one, I was not only, swim, ride, run, ride, swim, ride, run, ride, and having to get back in the water again multiple times. Every time it was getting longer. So it was progressively, I would particularly, so I swam the Windermere Lake, which was 18 kilometers. And at the time, I remember I was swimming, I was thinking, how the heck am I going to swim 41 kilometers after this? This seems to be taking me forever. I've got to get on my bike again. I've got to run up the mountain, and then I've got to swim another 41K. Yeah, so for me, the hard part was really just going from one to the other so quickly again.
Sure. I mean, you could have done it the other way. It might have been better mentally for you. Just we got somebody. Thanks. Yeah, you could have done it the other way, and you would have been better mentally prepared. But sure, you left the best.
Yeah. So I did think about it, and lots of people said to me, well, why don't you do it the other way around? It would be easier. But actually, there were 2 reasons. One, I always want to finish at the highest peak, and Ben Nevis is the highest of all the 3 mountains. But also the logistics actually of doing it the other way round would have been a nightmare, because the lake in all of them was always south of the mountain. So I would end up swimming and then going back on myself. So I'd ride north and then come back on myself to the lake and then go up and come back. So actually it would have probably involved a lot more riding as well. And I tend to try, although it doesn't look like it with the distances, I tend to try and find the shortest route between them. And
yeah, well, thanks for sharing that. And we've obviously, I think I haven't focused really on the great challenges of swimming across False Bay that has become, that has become quite interesting. And you've done that diagonal as well, which never been done before. So well done on that. Are there any other swims that you're looking around South Africa that you'd like to do, that you've got your eye on at the moment, or any other challenges, three-way challenges?
Yeah, I've got one swim that I still haven't done actually in South Africa is Dussin Island. I'm keen to still do that. I haven't, it's the one I haven't kind of ticked off yet. And I still, I love swimming Robben Island too, and Cape Point, and just, yeah, it doesn't always have to be, again, it's all relative, but it doesn't always have to be super long. Doing the Cape Point swim is one of the most beautiful swims in the world on the right day. Yeah. And if you don't breathe to the opposite side, and you can see the point, unlike Ryan sometimes.
Ryan, yeah, breathe both ways, Ryan.
Yeah, so no, so I definitely, there are things that I would still like to do here. And then from a sort of sea to summit perspective, I have set myself the challenge of trying to do a sea to summit on every continent. So there's quite a few continents left. I've got a rough idea of what they will all be, and they're all focused around the sort of ocean swims rather than anything else iconic, because I want to try and tick off, some, not all, because unfortunately I don't think because of the lion's mane I'll ever swim the North Channel. I'm so allergic to jellyfish. I think if I was stung by a lion's mane, it might actually kill me. So that is actually, when you were asking about the wetsuit, that is another reason why, particularly in ocean water where there are a lot of jellyfish, that I also tend to wear the wetsuit as well, because I am so allergic to jellyfish.
I think you're not alone there. So just wanted to ask you a little bit, I think you touched on it already, but obviously, you've gone through quite a lot of challenges with your personal reproductive health. You've talked a little bit about that, and now you're focusing on these. In fact, form this massive. It's an international charity now. There's a lot of work done in South Africa. There's obviously work in Europe as well. You talked about reproductive health, but there's talk around period poverty in South Africa as well. So can you tell us a little bit about this Lady Talk Matters, your charity, and what you're doing and how important it is to your challenges?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So when I first started doing, when I did the first challenge, for me, it was more about, and it still is, but raising awareness and educating not just young women and girls, but educating men and people around the world on, talking openly about menstruation and talking about periods, and, encouraging open conversation, because taboos in this world around certain topics like periods, do stem from the fact that we don't talk about it. It's embarrassing, and it's not necessarily something that is our fault. It's inherent learning. It's very much inherent learning from what we've been taught and how we've been brought up to discuss such topics. So the charity itself, initially, as you said, it was founded in Europe and focused heavily on education and improving talking about menstruation. But in South Africa, we focus specifically on period poverty. So on average, a young girl in this country misses 27 days a year of school because she can't afford basic sanitary products. So what we do as an organization, we employ ladies and girls from the rural township areas, and we skill them with the ability to make and sew reusable period pads. And we donate those into schools and we work with, you know, other NGOs, we work with municipalities, we work with lots of different organizations to get them to the girls that really need them, and most importantly, get them with the education, because it's that education piece on understanding, you know, your own rights as a woman, understanding that it's not right that you don't have access to these things, and just really, educating, providing access to period products, and keeping young girls in South Africa in school whilst they're on their periods. Because if you think 27 days a year, it's a significant amount of education that these young girls are missing out on.
No, absolutely. And I think if, those who want to know more, I mean, after you've gone to CETA Summit, you can go to Lady Talk Matters, just Google that, you'll find, I think it's the first website that should come up. Thank you very much, Andrea, for sharing that. It's obviously an important crusade, and I think something that's is not talked about enough. Yeah. So we move over to some questions now. So thanks for those who've put some questions in the comment section. I'm going to read some of them now. If you've got some more questions, feel free to add to these. I think, a posting from you to say that perhaps one of the most difficult challenges that you've ever done was the Cape Epic, the 2023 challenge. Is this true? No swimming involved, no running involved, just a cycle?
It was, yeah. So there is a little bit of a story behind that, but it's too long, I think. But it's basically, I am not a mountain biker. I got asked to do the Cape Epic just 4 weeks before the event. And up until that point, so to put it into perspective, I would only ever, a couple of weeks before that, I did the Xterra triathlon, but I did the sprint because I can't ride on anything other than gravel. I don't, or didn't have the technical capability to do anything else. But I got approached by a friend of a friend who had already entered, and his partner had unfortunately torn his ACL, and asked me, and they were raising through my friend, they had decided they would raise funds for Lady Talk Matters. And at this point, they had already raised a significant amount of money. And effectively, I think if I think about it now, I was blackmailed into doing it, because he basically said to me, I'll only now come over, because he was coming over from Europe, I'll only now come over and do it if you ride with me. I know you've got the fitness, you just need to go and get yourself some skills. So I had 3 weeks of intensive mountain biking lessons, and that was my entry into the Cape Epic. And yes, it quite possibly was, one of the hardest. I don't know in hindsight now if it's ever the hardest, but it's definitely one of the hardest things I've ever done. Just more for a couple of reasons. One, because of the fear. I didn't know learning something as an adult was so difficult, and that you burn so many calories through fear. And I also, because I was constantly having to hold on to the handlebars, I forgot to drink. The first 2 days, I didn't hydrate properly at all. So all these lessons that I've learned through all of my challenges went completely out of the window. So then on the third day, I had to borrow a friend's camel pack so that I could hydrate without having to take my hand off the handlebars. And so it was, it was a very long 8 days of my life, but I managed to stay on my bike and not break myself, which is quite unusual for me. I tend to break things easily.
Well, congratulations on that. Yet another achievement there. I've got a question from Ashley. What is your nutrition on the night before an extreme event? Are you carbo loading? I hear you said, I read somewhere that you're a celiac, so you're not digging into the bowls of pasta the night before, are you? You've obviously got something else that you do.
Yeah, so I mean, you still get a lot of carbs from gluten-free pasta and gluten-free sources of food. So I do, but I don't tend to carb load the night before. It's more, I'll make sure a couple of weeks before that I'm starting to really fuel myself quite far out for the big challenges. And then, because to me, the night before for this thing it's too late by then. I need to have been eating the right things at least for the couple of weeks before. And it is not just carbs, because for me, it's these events typically take 5 days. So I have to have a lot of protein as well, because I burn through the carbs so quickly that I've got to make sure that I'm fueling my body with protein. So I typically have, and when we talked about what do I take during the long swims, it's still liquid, but every 4th hour, I will always have a protein shake as well, so that I'm got the energy to continue with, and I'm not starting to break down my own muscle source.
Okay. And then, so I think the last question, there's just a question telling us a little bit about false bay. I'll make it into a question. I mean, how did you've done it twice, 2 different routes, completely different routes. What do you think of the false bay crossing? I mean, it's now gained a little bit of popularity with a few people doing what was seen as a nearly insurmountable challenge. And you've done it twice. What led you to do it the second time? Was one more
I don't, it's the definition of insanity.
Yeah.
No, I think firstly, the false bay is a huge swim. It is a very significant crossing, and I think the records at the minute show that a lot of people have completed it, that have started it. But I think you have to bear in mind that particularly in this country, you have a lot of flipping good open water swimmers. And you've got people that are doing it, that are doing the right things, that are prepared well, that are, so I think it shouldn't be, it is a very, very tough swim. It's up there with the toughest in the world, in my opinion. My first false bay was both have been tough, but you deal with the conditions that you're given on the day. It's how open water swimming goes. My first one, it looked amazing. For anyone to look at it, I had probably the best day ever. The water was flat. It was nice and warm. There was, there were dolphins. It was beautiful. But I did have a little bit of a head current and a cross current at the time, which does, it does grate on you after a while when you're constantly, knowing that you're trying, you should be swimming quicker than you are, but you're just not. But typically though, actually, it's probably something that not a lot of people do, but I don't wear a watch when I'm doing these long things. I don't like to know how far I'd swum, how far I've got left to go. I just literally concentrate on seeing somebody every half an hour, giving me my fuel. And I really don't think anything other than 30 minutes at a time. And then my second false bay, it's a route that I'd wanted to do for a while, and purely and genuinely purely because it would mean, because I live in Stellenbosch, and I was trying to think of something that I could just get out and get in a car and go home and not have to get back on a boat and sit on a boat for hours to go somewhere else, and not get on a bike to make it into another 3-5 day challenge. So I was thinking, if I can finish at Gordon's Bay, then Carl will be able to drive. He won't complain about the distance he's got to drive or support, or so then I'd be able to just get in the car, and go home. So no, the second one was really tough. For me, it was next level tough. It's, you know, the first 20 kilometers of it was amazing. I definitely had a bit of a swell in the right direction behind me, pushing me. I think I went through, having looked at the stats from Derek, I went through the first 20K in about 4.5 hours, just under 4.5 hours. And then the second 20K was 7.5. It changed. The swell wasn't coming from the right direction. It was going over the side of me. And, you know, every time you turn in your head, you've got waves in your mouth. And again, that just, after a certain amount of time, that just really starts playing on your mind, and you're just concentrating on putting one arm in front of the other and hoping that the end's coming at some point, which it always does eventually.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of tenacity to make it that far, though. Yeah, Andrea, listen, it's very inspiring, your story, and you know, I hope the audience has really got a lot out of your various challenges and what you've achieved. Thank you very much for sharing it with us. You are a quietly spoken person in our community, and you shouldn't be really. I think you've achieved more than almost everybody else, and I think yeah, we're just really interested into what's going to come next. So thank you very much for sharing with us, and also your charity. I think great that you're swimming for such a great noble cause. And you know, if people want to know more and want to support it, then you can go to Lady Talk Matters. But thank you very much, Andrea, and thanks to all the guests for joining us today. It's always fun to do these cold water capers, and yeah, thank you for your questions as well. We've enjoyed those too, and yeah, until next time, if there is anything from you, Manin?
No, thank you very much. Thanks, Andrea, and thanks, Tom, as always, for being a great sort of MC. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye. Keep well. Bye-bye.
Bye.